Good afternoon to all. I am Shravan, President of GSC. I welcome you all to the third graduate colloquium organized by GSC in collaboration with Institute of Advanced Studies NTU. As a graduate student club, we have received many inquiries from students asking us how valuable is my master's. When industry is looking at AI, machine learning, does my coursework has any value in the industry? Doing a PhD, is it worth enough? Spending 4 years in academics, how does it benefit in my industrial work life? How about joining industry after doing PhD? What is the difference between academics and industry? Our club worked on finding someone who has industrial and academic experience to answer all these questions. We are lucky enough to have Prof Avi Mendelson, and happy to see his interest in sharing his experience regarding industry and academics. Let me give a brief biography of Prof Avi. Prof Avi did his bachelor's and master's from Technion, Israel Institute of Technology. He pursued his PhD from University of Massachusetts. Later he joined Technion as a lecturer and took many academic roles and industrial roles. Now he is a visiting professor at NTU and Technion. Prof Avi Mendelson has a blend of industrial and academic experience in several different areas such as computer architecture, power management, security, machine learning, and real-time systems. He is an IEEE Fellow and the second Vice President of IEEE Computer Society 2019 Executive Committee. He was the Academic Outreach Program Manager at Microsoft Israel Research and Development Center, where he initiated different innovation-based activities among students. He also worked as the principal engineer at Intel. For his work as a chief architect of the CMP, multi-core on-chip feature of the first dual-core processors that Intel developed, he received the Intel Achievement Award, the highest award at Intel. Today we have Prof Avi to address academia versus industry in the era of unstable working market. Do we really need to study in order to succeed at work? Please welcome Prof Avi.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. So, thank you for coming. I decided this time not to give any technical talk about my research, but to address some of the things that I believe which are very fundamental to many students. So please make this talk interactive. If you have any question, don't wait for the end and interrupt me at any point. Or if you disagree, I hope that you will disagree with some of the things that I will present. You can interrupt me. I try not to use the entire time to leave time for questions and to expand according to your interests. So, what will cover? So, I'll start with a self-introduction, not because the previous introduction wasn't good, but we want to emphasize a few points, and thank you for the introduction. And I'll continue with the observation on the job market because it is very interesting and very important, and then we'll move to how important it is to have a degree in good university and not just or not to have a degree or in any other university. And then I'll address the question about higher education. Do we really need master, PhD, etc.? Then we move to some planning your career and conclusion. So, few words about my career, and I think that my career in some sense is a little bit unique because this is not what usually you see, because I started actually even before this chart. I graduated from the computer science department, and the first a few years I worked as a software engineer. And in parallel to my work, I did my master, and later on I moved and did my PhD, not in software engineering, this is what I work, but in computer architecture and in electronics. EE department. So then I joined the Technion for the EE department, and after a few years I left back to the industry, but I kept my research team at the Technion, and actually from that time, I continued to work both in the industry and in the academia. Sometimes it was 60% in the industry, 40% in the academia. Now it is more like 60% in the academia, 40% in the industry, but I try to balance and to work in both worlds. And some of the reasons that I'm doing it because I developed my own rules for my professional life, and I try not to stay in the same place and the same work for more than 5-6 years. I found out that after this period of time, it started to be obvious. They are coming to work every day. You enter the meeting, you know exactly how the meeting will end up. You know that you need to spend for another hour for discussion. They know what you're going to say. You know what they're going to say. It's not to be a little bit boring. So even if I stay, for example, in Intel, I was 12 years. I was 6 years in the research and 6 years in the computer architecture in the product lines, because I found it very stimulating to move all the time, even though it is quite difficult because each time you move, you need to reestablish yourself. Nobody knows you, you don't have the credit. On the other hand, by the time, accumulatively, you get some experience that other people don't have. And I'll go back to this point later on. So, I also decided I need to set priority to myself, and also, each time that I start something, I determine to myself, not to anybody else. What is my success criteria and what is my goals? And if I found out that I'm not fulfilling my own success criteria, I couldn't care less if the company that I work with, they are happy or unhappy. I just leave and move elsewhere. Because for me at least, it is more important to feel that I'm doing something that I'm satisfied with, and not just to come get money, be happy, etc. Again, this is not obvious because most of the people, and we'll come to this point later on, their first priority is to earn more money, or they have other priority. But it is extremely important that each one of you will determine for himself or with the family what are the priorities. Because otherwise, you don't know how to judge if you're doing good or maybe you want to change something. So, I will try to connect everything at the end. So let's move to the future of the job market. This is based on an article that was published in the Forbes magazine, one of the most prestigious magazine in economics. And this is fairly new. And the title is Predicting for the uncharted job market of the future. And the conclusion are that the job markets will be ridiculously different in the next years. There are waves of forces that will significantly change the way we work and type of work that we are doing. And the rapidly, we'll find out that rapidly everything will be changed because everything will be more sophisticated, and the requirement for the jobs will change all the time. And then we give a few examples. Robotics are expected to be replaced by many, to replace many blue-collar jobs. And this is a major concern. AI machine learning will replace much of the white-collar jobs. Lawyers, who needs many people who just fill up forms. Machine can do it even in a better way. Who need to search for similar cases in code? Machine learning can do it much better than people. Even for doctors, who will search all the information that exists in the world. Maybe somebody had similar disease and you already have some experience how to treat this case. Machine can do it much better than people. So it is not that it will replace people, but most likely you will need many less people in these jobs. Another example is that autonomous machine, autonomous cars will dramatically change the transportation system. By the way, it's not just a transformation system. Parking. Not parking anymore. The car will bring you to work, and either it is a pool of cars, and so you will go like taxi for another client, or you will go back to your home and will park in the garage. You don't need a parking. And many other related topics. So, even training or teaching people will be done by online learning. By the way, this is a concern that exists even today in some university. If you accept courses like in Coursera, which has the best teachers in the world, so why not let them teach? Why do you need professors in the university? Forget about the research, I'm talking about the teaching. So much of these professions will be changed. So again, I'm not saying that people will not work. People will work, but the way that they will work and what they are doing will be dramatically different than what we are doing today. And we need to realize that the world is changing. However, this is not the first time in the world that it happened. During the Industrial Revolution, thousands or hundreds of thousands of people lost their job. They used to sew, and the machines started doing it much, much faster. So, what we call today the current people, the people that do simple works, they thought that we would need many less of them. So it is very clear that many things will change, which go back to the academia in the future work job market. Then it is clear that what we are teaching you today most likely will not be used, much of the material, in 5 to 10 years. I can almost guarantee that it will not be used, as is. So the programming language will not be the same. We are teaching you how to build machines, or how to maintain machines, and machines will maintain machines. And who needs to know exactly how the machine is built? Because anyhow, robots will build it, so you need very few people that they will be the expert, and all the rest will be done by machines that have to build machines that have the human being. By the way, the joke says that at one point the robots will wake up in the morning and will say, oh, what is this creature called human being? They just eat and their productivity is very low. Maybe we don't need it. So anyhow, it is clear that for everybody in the academic world, that what we are actually much of what we are teaching you will not be relevant quite soon. So the question is why to study, or what to study, or that higher education is important. So this is the reason that I decided to give this talk, to expand these topics and to discuss it. So let's start today why to study. So the answer is very simple. Usually, you earn much more money if you are coming from a good university, if you have a good education. It is much easier to get a job, and the money that you are getting is much better. So today, the answer is very, very obvious. And your initial salary usually depends on the school, on your grades, etc. The real question, does it really matter for your next job? The answer is it is not clear. Because you can come with an excellent grades from an excellent school, and your employer will decide that you are not giving good enough productivity to the company, and maybe somebody who is not that qualified gives more benefit to the company, and he or she will earn more money than you are. I remember at one point at Intel, there was a couple that he was a professor at the university and she was a programmer, and both of them they decided to leave the Chicago area and to move to Portland. So both of them applied to work at Intel, and she got much more money than he, because she was a programmer. She was educated only as a degree, but she was an excellent programmer, and they really need her. And he was an excellent researcher, but who really need excellent researcher in Intel, at least at the time? So he was really offended to realize that he got much less money than she got. So we'll go back to this point because it is not that simple, but it doesn't guarantee that, your salary or your future, in the future, if it will be that it will be depend on the school or on the grad, because later on, company has much better benchmark. It is called real life. How much you contribute. So it is not just hiding behind the names, it's coming with numbers. So, the next question is what to study? What to study is something that bothers many, many people. Because there are professions that we know that you earn a lot of money. For example, if you work in computer, since everything will be computerized, you may assume that you will get a very good salary. Small question, how many students around the world are studying today computer science and computer engineering? Who can guess? Not everybody? Somebody? So let's look at the numbers. In China, there are 2 to 5 million people who study. Every year, they have about 2 million people that graduated from computer science and computer engineering schools. I verified. I didn't count it, but this is what I was told by my friends from China. I assume that around the world there are another 2 to 5 million people. I can tell you that most of these people cannot find jobs. In China, something like only 5 to 10%, sometimes 2 to 3% are getting real jobs in computer industry. So, the job market doesn't need more graduate students in computer-related works. This is very clear. But the job market urgently needs many good and excellent students. Because the point is that you you don't need just people that come and study. You need people who are really talented, that really understand it, and can do a real good job. And these kind of people, the estimation that the state, for example, I just read an article a few days ago that they claim that they're missing something like 200,000 experts in computers. So this is a kind of misbalance. It is misbalance because it is not enough to go and to study and get some degree in computers. You need to be expert and you need to justify the salary that you are getting. Because just to do a simple work in computers, usually we have more than enough. But as a result, my conclusion, if you ask me what to study, so my conclusion is always choose to study what you enjoy doing on the topics that you will to devote your time and always aim to excel. So if people, when students come to me and ask me, what do you suggest me to study, usually answer them what you really like, what you really can show how good you are, and it doesn't really matter if it will be in computers or it will be in other topics. So again, you can study many other, and I'll give you later on many examples, and you can, in between or in parallel, do works on computers because everybody needs to know and use computers, but again, it will not help you to do something that you don't like, because at the end of the day, you will have to work many years in a field, and if you don't like what you are doing, there are very small chances that you will be able to show that you are good. So at least this is my conclusion, that always try to focus on the areas that you can show that you are the best, or at least the best that you can in that area. So, going back to the question, when the market changed, so why we're still teaching you the material that I said that which is useless? Because this is not the entire truth. The entire truth is that the basics, like math, physics, maybe even philosophy, music, etc., remain the same. And even in the future, when you move from one area to another, the fact that you are good in mathematics and physics will help you to move from one occupation to another, from one field to another. If you don't understand the math, it is almost impossible to move from something that you study, and this is one of the problems of schools that don't pay enough attention on the basics and just teach technology. If you just know how to program in one programming language, tomorrow they ask you to do something which is in hardware security or software security, you don't understand the math, you could not do anything. On the other hand, if you understand the basics, so the basic remains the same. And then even if you need or want to move from one area to another, it is relatively easy, or at least it is doable. Otherwise, it is impossible. So, this is the reason, for example, that at the Technion, when you study computer engineering, the first 2 years, our students study mathematics together with the math department. And our students study physics together with the student of the physics department, because we believe that they, first of all, need to master the basics. Later on, if they use one programming language, another programming language, one technology, another technology, we spend a lot of time in CMOS. CMOS at one point And then there will be another technology. So in that sense, we are wasting their time for the future, the time that we don't work in cities. But the knowledge and the know-how to build computers will help them to build computers which are made out of other material or other techniques, etc. So this is the most important, and this is the reason to study in good schools and to spend most of your time or energy on the basics. On the other hand, I think that it is extremely important to expand your knowledge and experience to more than one discipline. I know quite a few people who has a PhD in computer science, computer engineering, and they also have some jazz band, or they are playing in places. By the way, in Google research in Israel, so the CEO of the site has some special room which for bands to practice because he himself is a musician. So he decided to encourage people in the company to spend time on music and not just on programs. But this is not rare. That people are expanding the knowledge beyond the specific area that they study or working in. And again, this is the key for being able to move from one discipline to another later on. So, this is my view. I know that many people will not agree with me. Master, bachelor, or PhD. So I think that to have a bachelor in a good school is almost must. People who are skipping a university, if their name is not Jobs or Bill Gates, usually end up doing something which is very focused, and if they need to move, it is very difficult to them. Many of them go back to school, but it is quite difficult. For most of the people, this is essential. I think also master's degree is needed in order to allow you to extend your knowledge in a specific area, to allow you to understand what is the front of knowledge, to expand, to explore your idea, to know how to express them, which is very, very important, and to be much better prepared for the professional life. PhD, on the other hand, when people ask me what is the main reason for doing PhD, so there is, from my point of view, only two answers. One is I want to stay in the academia, I want to be a professor. Great answer. And the other answer is because I want. This is my desire. And I really think that this is the real reason to do PhD. Because if you look on how much money you are losing if you already have a master, how much money you are losing for not working at that time, and how much money you are paying, there are statistics that it will take you something like 10 to 20 years to gain back the lost. So, and it is not clear that financially, and purely financially, it was to do the PhD. Saying that in an unstable market like what we have today, the fact that you have a PhD allows you usually to be on the front even when you work in a company, so to be in the front of the technology, and then if you need to move, you know before everybody else, it gives you some advantage. But again, this is not direct advantage. This is indirect advantage that you have for being involved in more further-looking technology and to understand and and sometimes to get some job that otherwise you could not get. But again, I think the most important reason for somebody to do a PhD is because he feels that he wants to do it. By the way, at Israel we have a different system than here, and there are many companies like Intel, IBM, and a few others that encourage their employee after many years in the works to go back many times. They pay them salary during that time and do their PhD. The reason is that after working in the same field for too many years, you start to be much less effective. But the company knows that in the past it was very effective, so the way actually to allow you to refresh yourself, to learn something new, and to renew your professional life is to allow them to go to a PhD. So we have quite a few very experienced students that are coming back to do their master or PhD after working many years in the industry, which as an academia gives us a huge advantage of very experienced people that know how to work, that usually has a lot of experience, and they are patient to do the job because they're not coming just because they want more money. They already get money from the company. Okay. So, let's discuss a little bit about what I call perceptions and misperception about the job market. So, one of the perceptions grad reflects how much the candidate will fit the job. True or not true? So the answer is that this is false, but most of the HR uses the grads as a filter, at least to know if to spend time to interview the people. And there are many people that look on the grads. Today, many of the companies don't look on the averages, but they look on specific topics, and in order to sort out candidates. By the way, what really works is not if you are from the HR point of view. What really works good is not to look on individual grad, but to look on groups to see does the person is good more in mathematics or in implementation. This you can study quite easily, but usually the fact that you have good grads doesn't guarantee anything. You always need to agree with your boss. No. True or false? It depends. It depends on the boss. It also depends on the culture, because there are countries, like in Japan, the culture is you always agree with what the boss telling you. And there are many stories about how decisions are made in Japan, but this is one example. Good managers usually encourage criticism. Most of the time they encourage when you critique somebody else. Very few people really like that you will make criticism of themselves. But it is very, very cultural dependent. And again, for example, if you give a talk in Israel, most of the people that try it in the first time are astonished, because you cannot finish any a slide in the presentation without somebody giving some comments or remarks. This is the tradition. You can be the most experienced professor or the head of some department, you come and give a real technical talk, and student that just read something about it in the newspaper, no, you have no idea what you are talking about. So sometimes it is annoying, but this is the culture. You always need to judge what people are telling you. I think that this is good. I think that if you just listen and agree with what you have been told, you are missing a major part of being able to be innovative, you're missing a major part of being able to invent something new, which is very important in the academia, but also in the industry. But again, there are cultures that it is almost a taboo that you cannot do it. And there are people who are really afraid that they will risk their job if they will say something which is against the boss or critique the personal relation helps for promotion. True or false? Unfortunately, it's true. Managers are the most talented technical people in the company. Unfortunately, not always, because the qualification you need to become a good manager are different than being a technical leader. This is a very polite way to say that many times if you are not a good worker, they promote you to be a manager. Your salary position is directly depends on your contribution to the company. True or false? Why false? You will assume that if you contribute to the company, so you should get a higher salary. And in reality, you need to understand that first of all, if you are not delivering, they either reduce your salary or they will fire. This is clear. But your salary and promotion depends mainly on how much it will cost to replace you. Which means that you can be the most valuable worker in the world, and tomorrow the company find out that they can get a young guy that can deliver the same, exactly the same as you, but he's getting 80% of salary, you'll find yourself out of the company. So again, I'm not sure how it works in Singapore. There are countries like Germany or France that it is almost impossible to fire people. So in that sense, it is less dangerous. But in most of the cases, this is reality. Even in Germany or in France, they will continue to pay you, but they will hire somebody else, hoping that you will leave the company. So this is something that usually students don't really understand, and what came out of all, and especially the last point. It is not enough that you will be good. It is even not enough that you will be excellent. You need to be in some sense unique. You need to give something that other people or other employees cannot provide. So it is not to say that you need to hide something so you will be valuable. By the way, there are people who are doing it. But you need to have something excellent. This is the reason that when you come in with background like myself, which is software and hardware and few other things, usually there are something that you can contribute that other people that come with background only with software or only with hardware doesn't have. But many times it can be as simple as being able to do, I don't know, something that the company really needs, certain connections. Sometimes be nice with your boss. It doesn't matter, but you need to have something that will distinguish you from the other employee. This is very basic, and again, it's not good enough that you will be good. And something that always important is to make sure that other people know that you are doing something which is unique. It is not good enough that you know it. Because if you know it and your boss doesn't know it, it will not help you. So keep in mind, this is extremely, extremely important. So moving forward for planning your career, so a few personal notes on your career, and again, these are my conclusion. I'm sure that other people would come with a different list. So, I think a career like any other issue in life based on trade-offs. A trade-off mainly between your capabilities, opportunities, sometimes you have opportunities and sometimes you don't. By the way, opportunities are many times things that you create for yourself. You go to conferences, one thing is to present your work, but if you just present your work and you go to your hotel room, you lose the opportunity to speak with people and to get to know them, to make some social connection. These are extremely, extremely important, many times even more than presentation that you give. Same as the work. After the presentation, you go to the pub, you drink some beer, some other workers from other companies start talking what they are doing. It gives you some ideas. I'm not saying that you need to steal ideas, but at least it inspires you to think about what you are doing from a different point of view. So, always try to make opportunities for yourself. Usually, you never be able to fulfill all of them, so you need to trade off between them. And some people will say, I want to earn more money. Some people will say, I want to be a big manager. Some people will say, for me, my family is the most important. I couldn't care less to earn less money, but the family is more important. It is extremely important that at least for yourself or your family, the people that you care, you will be at least agree what are the parameters that you judge yourself and the job. So, always define your goal for the short term, mid-term, and for the long term. And always set measurable targets, not to other people, but to yourself. I work in one of the places, and when I came, they asked me, okay, what do you like to do? And I said, A, B, C, D. I said, great, you really like it, you start the work. I told them, in 2 years, I'm going to review myself. So, everybody tells us that. So after 2 years, I had another review, and for half an hour they told me how satisfied they are. Then I told them, in A, I couldn't do it, B, you didn't allow me to do it, and C, you didn't, it didn't happen. So what is your conclusion? Next day, I start looking for a new job. Because it doesn't matter if the company is satisfied for me. The company is satisfied with what I'm doing. First of all, I think that I need to satisfy with myself. And if you don't set the criteria, it is so easy to cheat yourself because it is always easier. Say, okay, the salary is good. People are nice, so why not to continue? But if you don't set the criteria for yourself, you don't have any measurable way to judge yourself if you are on the right track or not. So, as I told you before, I think that it is most important for you to do what you really like. And I'll give a few examples again. This is not a typical case, but let's look. One of the leaders of software development in Intel was, can you guess? What he studied?
Philosophy.
Almost. He was a pediatrician, real story. With pediatrician, he worked with kids. So in the morning, he didn't have too many patients. So Intel just looked for the industrial doctor to work only in the morning. So he said, okay, why not in the morning I work there, and in the afternoon I work with kids. And then he said, oh, they're doing very cool things, and he became a software guy. And at the end, he ended up as a senior VP in India. So people claim that he is the best programmer among all the pediatricians in the world. The second person in Apple is a professional. You may assume that Apple technology company, yeah, it was a designer, because Steve Jobs really appreciated, he claimed that the design is what people are really buying, not the technology. The lead compiler team in IBM was a musician. He's a guy from Turkey. Interesting story, because you know in Europe there is a big musical contest called Eurovision. And the first song that was sent by Turkish to this musical competition was written by him. So even though he was leading, and later on he became a very famous compiler person. So even today when you go in Turkish, everybody knows him by name, because he is the hero of writing the first song to the Eurovision. So, the leader of software in TRW, US-based company, she was piano player. By the way, another nice story, because I asked her, I met with her and I asked her, how come that as a piano player you become a software engineer? And she said, oh, in order to get a master in piano playing, they asked us to study foreign language. So I had two chances. I could study French or Fortran. So she chose Fortran. And she ended up in software. And the best programmer in my team was actually a bus driver. So this is a little bit typical to Israel, because in the past he was a lawyer, but when he immigrated to Israel, because lawyers heavily depend on the language, he couldn't work as a lawyer. So the only job that he found was a bus driver in a company. So he used to drive people from one place to another and stay there for many hours. So he started studying some programming. And one day after he knew how to program, so one day when he just drive people, they start discussing that they have an urgent problem to write programs, and they don't have anyone that can do it. So, hey, I can do it. First in history. The conclusion is very simple. If you do what you really like, many times, and if you have a very good background that you can convert from one direction to another, later on in life, not always, but many times, you have opportunities. And if you have the passion to make the change, you can do the change. You can do the change from computer science to musician, or from musician to computer science. But I think that you need to have the confidence that at least there are few things that you can do and you are the best. If you have this confidence, if you have the background, you can succeed almost in anything that you will do in the future. So this is way, way more important than to decide if to study computer science or something else. This is at least my vision. So, we are almost at the end, so we have some conclusion. So, first of all, I start with the picture of what is my career path, and I ask. So again, here I will have a few question and answer to myself, which is the privilege when you prepare the slides, you can do whatever you like. So, if this career path was good or bad? And the answer, like many other things, it depends. It depends on what your targets. If your first target is to earn more money, I can tell you, working for many years in a large company like Intel or Microsoft, at the end of the day, you will get much more money than to move from the academia to industry or even to go to startups, etc. The only problem is that in large companies there are so many limitations that you need to decide what is your priority. But again, if your first priority is to get much more money, I did a very bad job. I had quite a few chances to earn much more money, and then I said, no, thank you, and I moved. So, if you look at academic career, so staying full-time in the university could be a much better choice for me. But again, there are other limitations. So, the main point at the end of the day, each of us need to understand what are his or her priority in life and to plan his or her career accordingly, and never ask yourself what would happen if I had another priority in life. Because as far as we know, we don't have every try. At least we are not aware of it. So, another thing that many times people, leaders, don't follow, what is better. So, this is quite crucial in many, many workplaces. Follower has the advantage not to take a risk. More than that, in many companies, you are getting promoted not for contributing, but for avoiding making mistakes. So if you choose to be a leader, you always have the risk that you will make a mistake, and then it will, at the end of the day, will work against you. On the other hand, the thing is fun. So, and the feeling to realize that idea that you initiate and become a successful product is incredible. So, again, depends on your willing, depend on your character, etc. There is no definite answer what is good, what is bad. I will skip this one, startup or companies, because they are almost at the end. And just last but not least, always remember that right now, that it is not very rare that people reach the age of 100 and beyond. After work, you have many years. Which means that you need to make sure that you not devote your life only to work or only to a single task that when it finishes, you're doomed. So both financially, but even more important, you need to build your career in such a way that it will have some kind of continuation. It doesn't need to be in the work that you're doing, it can be in parallel. But you need to be prepared to do something else. Many times you find out that this alternative, much earlier in the line, become the main track and you move to it. Because you have an opportunity. I'll finish with a short story. When I just graduated from school, I work in a company, and one of the best engineers that was there, the company did very well, so he got a big bonus, and he was extremely happy. So I asked him, okay, so what you are going to do? So he said, oh, I'm going to quit work. Why are you going to quit? Well, I always had the inspiration to be a teacher, but teachers never earn enough money. So now that I got this big bonus, I can quit and do what I really want to do in life. So, just by having some inspiration for other things, it can be hobby, it can be many things. Many times you have an opportunity, you find out that this is very, very fruitful, even during your working time. I'll stop here, and if you have questions, please.
Thank you, Professor Avi, for most informative talk. Hope you all use your suggestions in predicting our future. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. We will pass the mic.
Thank you for the talk, and I really enjoyed how you made it personal with your own career. And one of my biggest takeaway was to stay flexible. But maybe I wanted to ask you, when you were a graduate student, or when you were, when you were young, how much were you planning for, or how much were you thinking about the things that you talked about today?
First of all, I was lucky to have an uncle that actually, with the day that I was graduated, he had a company. And he came to me and said, where are you going to be in 5 years? So I told him, come on, I'm just graduated, so what is this silly question? And he answered me what I wrote here. If you know where to point that you want to be, 50% that you will be there. If you cannot point, you will not be there. And this is something that I kept in my mind for a long time. And a few other issues that make me believe that first of all, I need to set my set of priority. But again, I know very few people who are doing it, but the reason that I came and give you this talk to persuade you that I think that this is good. Maybe yes, maybe no, but this is my takeaway.
Any more questions?
Hey, Prof. Thank you very much for that again. The thing is, in earlier times, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, the problem that I have is we are always inundated and bombarded with all these predictions that the industry makes. You shared one from Forbes. Earlier you had one from Gartner that says, data science is going to be the next big thing. So we are always always like, okay, fine, that's a bandwagon that we need to get onto. So how do we sort of, as whether we are from undergrads or with your graduate students, how do we sort of overcome that? That's my first question. The second one is also these industry experts in so-called sectors like to share the state of the globalized West world. Whether you're coming from Israel or whether it's in Singapore, whichever part, but they don't talk about the developing emerging nations that does not have that infrastructure to automate that fast. And in those situations, we do need those graduates, who are from the traditional fields of education. So it's, what I'm trying to get at is that whatever we study might not exactly become obsolete in the next 5, 10, 15 years, because we will find a place, but the question is, where do we want to find our place? Because the slide that you skipped about startups and established companies, that could have made a difference, whether we want to get into Intel or Microsoft, or whether we just want to support a startup that is happening in Vietnam. Thank you.
Well, very good questions, and yeah, in 1 hour I have to skip some of the things, but about predictions. Winston Churchill used to say that it is very hard to predict even the past. So it is true because it is hard to predict. On the other hand, there are trends. And you can look at the trend and it is clear that things like that, most of us will work in different areas because they will be forced to move from one area to another. And prediction like that the world is changing and there is no way to predict, because the technology is progressing so fast that there is no way that you can tell how the market will look like in few years. There are many other aspects like control of governments on what we are doing, privacy, etc., etc. So, but this is a topic for another talk. So you cannot predict. So first of all, you need to be prepared. I cannot predict. And if you cannot predict, the only thing that you can do is do something which is similar to what you are doing in machine learning. Increase the probability that if you want to do something, the probability that it will happen will be high. So if your basics are good, the probability that you will be flexible is very high. If you grab experience in more than one field, the probability that you could move is higher, but more than that, the probability that you are unique because only you or very few people has the experience in particular these two areas is high. So the way that I would address it is, again, try to create the baseline for the prediction or for the trend that may happen in the future. Because you cannot predict. And anyone who will come and give a prediction, you can laugh and say, your prediction is as good as mine. So, now, to the second question, yes, you are right that I refer mainly to what we call the developing or the Western world. But luckily now this talk is in Singapore, it's not in China or Vietnam. Yeah, we need to take care about it, not just because of we need to understand the globalization, but also we need to understand what I try to emphasize, that there are almost 10 million people who can do simple jobs. And simple jobs are all the jobs that you don't need very sophisticated knowledge, etc. And at the moment that many people could do what we consider now as sophisticated, this will be the simple job. Because the simple job, like commodity, is something that many people can do, and then the competition is on the price, not on the quality. So, and you want to be in a position that you have something which is unique, so you are not in this commodity game. Because as soon as you are in a commodity way, you don't like to earn the salary that people in China are getting. So these are the choices. It is with a lot of simplification.
Yes, thanks, Prof.
Now, about the startups and so on, this is again different topics, and the reason that I skipped it is that I think that to be innovative is something that you need to start from the kindergarten. It's not something that you can start at the university. If you go to, again, I gave you a lecture in China, and nobody asked questions, and everybody agree with you. So this is not an environment that you can have creative ideas.
That is why Israel is the best place for incubation and innovation.
By the way, the education department in MIT had an excellent idea that unfortunately we are not implementing it. They said that in any textbook or in any class that you give, you need intentionally put errors. Which means, at the beginning of the class, you come and say, intentionally, I put 3 mistakes in my slides. At the end of class, I give bonus to people who find the mistakes. It first of all forces to listen. Secondly, it forces you, all the students, to judge every statement that you are saying if it is true or false. And this is the right approach. Unfortunately, it is a little bit too complicated, so people are not implementing. But this is a way, for example, to raise awareness of thinking about the issues from different angles. Don't believe to anything. Always judge and try to improve it. But yeah, but again, this is a different topic. Maybe one day we can have a separate lecture on it.
Well, if you have any more questions, you can interact with Professor Avi sometime. Now let's thank Professor Avi once again.
Thank you.
We have a small gift for him on behalf of GAC.
Thank you.
We have